this creature's overpowered. It'll kill your entire party. Or at least that's what you want me to say at the start of this, but really, this topic is a bit more nuanced, and I want to go into why a lot of these creatures are busted, in addition to what kinds of weaknesses these creatures tend to have, so that when a GM is designing their own creatures, or you as a player want to know what types of things you should bring to beat the hardest fights, you can then do that. And to do this, I split things into two main categories. The puzzle monsters, wait for 30 seconds, and the bullshit monsters. There we go. Had to wait for the 30 seconds, that way the YouTube ad police don't come knocking down my door. Just how it works. Sorry about that. Now, what makes a creature a puzzle monster? So, it's defined by a simple set of criteria, and it's near impossible to defeat without specific tools. So, you should think of the puzzle monster as you need to bring in your puzzle piece to lock it into that puzzle to actually be able to beat the encounter. This is not your escape room style puzzle where the room contains everything you need to escape. It is the type of puzzle where I hope you bought the right jigsaw piece at Home Depot last week. It's there. And invalidates many common forms of counterplay. And the subcategory, of course, the counterpick monsters that shut off one style of play specifically. Yeah. Now what makes creature bull? Not gonna say the other half of that, so that way I don't get demonetized. And if you think that joke is funny, like and subscribe. Anyway, defined by a simple set of criteria again, it's near impossible to defeat and invalidates counterplay. Now, those of you who actually have me on your screen will notice that it's the same criteria as last time, but with a strike through. Subcategories do exist as well, and it's one big turd, one big overpowered ability, or many little potent turds that just add together to be way too much. So, with that, let's just move on to some examples. Alright, so I just want to start off with a creature that isn't really a true puzzle creature, but it does have some of the elements I'd like to talk about later, notably a weakness. And now, a weakness is every time this creature takes that type of damage, it will take a bit more of that. And so if I go over here to the building creatures rules, you can see that in terms of its HP, which if I just scroll down to its hit points, it has 63 of them, which is higher than the high value listed for level 3. So that means werewolves have a lot more HP, and you're expected to be hitting their weakness a couple times in order to bring them down to like the reasonable level of HP they're supposed to be at. And the same way, if you look at Skeletal Giant, you can see it has much lower AC than the werewolf, much lower HP, but it's still a bulkier creature because it has all these resistances that are listed off to the right. And that means that I can get away with having this lower HP, but it is effectively much tankier. And so, I made a spreadsheet. And here's a bunch of numbers to describe the type of damage you'd be doing into each monster. So, to start with, the average damage, I'm just going to say, is 10, because that's similar enough to a fighter's average damage. Because if we are assuming a polearm fighter, because I think of that as my normal damage character, and plus 4 strength at the lower levels, because these are level 3-ish creatures that I'm all looking at here. So, just one damage die, D10, so that's 9.5, round up to 10 to make the numbers cleaner. Resistance of 5, weakness of 5, the HP of the werewolf is actually 63. You see the effective damage per hit. The resistance of 5 from the skeleton, and the resistance of 5 from the werewolf. Now the effective damage per hit is 5 onto the skeleton and 15 onto the werewolf. And you can see their hits to kill pre-resistance, there are 5 hits to kill the skeleton, 6.3 to kill the werewolf, but then in actuality, it takes 10 hits to kill that skeleton. And only 4.2 to kill the werewolf. So you can see the weakness save, 2.1, minus 5. And of course, if I come back here and I say, well, what if it's a giant instinct barbarian using a 2-handed weapon, has like 25 damage on average? You can see the resistance or weakness stops mattering after you start getting to high enough damage numbers to where you can just overpower it. And so just having a resistance or weakness is not enough on its own. I do want to point out that when you are dealing these smaller amounts of damage, particularly in the early game, these resistances of 5 can negate like half your damage and make fights take twice as long if you are not avoiding these weaknesses. Or avoiding these resistances where hitting the weakness isn't as big of a deal, because you're really only saving a couple hits, even if the numbers are the same size. Because what the numbers mean is different. And I want you to keep that in mind, as I now want to talk about hardness, from something like an animated statue. And so the idea of hardness is that it is resistance to all damage types. And this resists each damage type independently because of how the damage step works. Basically, if you deal 10 bludgeoning, 3 fire into this thing, it is only going to take 4 bludgeoning and resist all of the fire because each damage type is resisted individually. You might not like that's how that rule works, but it is, and I can go in ending, pull up the exact rule, throw it up on screen, but due to how phases in the damage step work, the pools of damage are separate, they're resisted, and then it gets subtracted. It's a whole thing. And so having a hardness will make a creature much more difficult to deal with unless you have big single hits. So we're already looking at a more narrow party size if you have resistance. And then of course there was a subtype that would just turn off one type of counterplay. And I'm going to use gelatinous cubes as an example here, because they have a lot of very silly immunities, notably critical hits. So all that like fighter accuracy stuff to punish this AZ-10, nope, doesn't work anymore. Just, why would it work? It's immune to crits. You can't crit news. It's also immune to precision damage, just in case you had any thoughts about playing a rogue. So what this does when you put a gelatinous cube in play is all your players kind of go, well, now my class abilities are useless. And the casters go, well, I can't punish its reflex with Electric Arc. And everybody just kind of sits there, being sad. This is where we're starting to get into more puzzle monster territory, because critical hits are built into the game itself to be like a major thing you go for. And precision damage turns off specific classes. So what if there's just a major part of the game and half the classes just got turned off? So anyway, pre-remaster golems have this funny ability called Golem Anti-Magic. And it basically says that all of the creatures in this family are going to be basically immune to most spells. Great! So yeah, you look at the golems and you can see, oh look, laundry list of immunities, including all magic. For some reason, just all magic. Spellcaster, and you didn't think to take Wrestler archetype? Sorry, your abilities just don't work unless you have a specific trait. None of your abilities work anymore. Sorry. Oops. I'm really happy golems are getting a mechanical rework in the remaster as well as a name change. This is legitimately like a problem for the game. Like, actually. And I'm not trying to be disingenuous when I say that. I think that golems, as they are right now, and you can see resist all the physical damage, just in case the marshals thought they'd get by. I think golems are legitimately, as they're designed right now, a problem for the game. Because I don't think any creature should just be immune to half of the stuff in the game. Because, like, ghosts were changed to become fightable for marshals as soon as they have a magic weapon, with how they did their resistances. And these are just immune to magic. And I don't necessarily think that's fun to just turn off a bunch of abilities like that. And this is what I mean when I complain about puzzle monsters. If you don't come in with these specific mechanics to deal with this, it's going to be a much harder fight than you probably want it to be. So now, of course, the advice could be get good and just carry the spells that would hit the creatures that you're fighting. And honestly, fair, but I also think that we need to consider the people that are playing this game that are not trying to optimize every single edge case out of it. Because I think these are a problem creature for the parties that are just like a bunch of friends wanting to play this game together, the GM wants to summon Iron Golem because Iron Golem is the name of a Minecraft mob, and then they just kind of get vine boomed by none of the spells working anymore. So I'm happy these are getting a rework, actually. Of course, a puzzle monster could also just require something specific instead of, disabling half the game. And that's the case for stuff like trolls, because trolls have regeneration. And what regeneration does is this monster regains the listed number of hit points each round at the beginning of its turn. Its dying condition never increases beyond dying 3 as long as its regeneration is active. However, if it takes damage type listed in the regeneration entry, the regeneration deactivates until the end of its next turn. Deactivate the regeneration before applying any damage of a listed type, since that damage might kill the monster by bringing it to dying 4. So, in other words, the trolls are unkillable, completely and utterly unkillable unless you have acid or fire. Those 2 damage types alone are the only things that can actually bring down a troll permanently. And if you don't have easy access to those, it's going to be regenerating 20 health every turn when its HP is already above what you would expect from a level 5 creature because it has a weakness. If you are not prepared to hit the acid and fire weakness of a troll, it will just steamroll you. Because you can try and outlast it, and then beat it to the ground into a pulp, and then just start trying to tie it down. But the amount of resources it'll take to do that, if you're at a point where the troll is a boss fight, is, quite frankly, unreasonable for a level 5 creature. So this is a damage type check, which is another type of puzzle monster. Do you have this damage type? And, of course, there's what I think is the king of the puzzle monsters, the Hydra. Look at all this text. Just for a moment, even if you're an audio-only listener, take out your phone out of your pocket. If you're on YouTube Premium, you're just listening. Take a look at the amount of text on screen right now. This is a level 6 creature. What in the world? Actually. And so this one has Hydra regeneration because it has a special form of regeneration based on the amount of heads it has left, and can potentially regrow heads unless you explicitly cut off each individual head and then cauterize the wound with either acid or fire. Again, seeing that acid or fire theme come back up again. It's just wild out here for the Hydras. It's just, you need to be ready to do fire damage consistently in order to get rid of a Hydra. You need to be ready to have the acid damage consistently to get rid of a Hydra. And also, it has many, many reactions. So if you don't have a way to deal with those reactions, good luck beating it. Simply approaching it can provoke reactive strikes because it has a reach. And it has reactive strikes equal to its amount of heads, which by default is not 1, by the way. It ordinarily has 5 heads. So you are seeing a creature where you have 5 reactive strikes per round, and you need to have specific damage types to deal with it. So how you deal with a Hydra is you have a spell that turns off its reactions. You have somebody go in and start cutting off heads, and you start cauterizing the wounds of those heads with acid or fire damage that you need to have on a repeatable source. And if you don't have one of those pieces, the fight just got way more difficult than you were expecting, because as you're fiddling around with those torches and getting hit by reactive strikes, you might just get wiped by a creature that's lower level than you. And I know that is technically possible because there is an adventure path that I was playing with Ronald the Rules Lawyer, where there is a modified Hydra as an enemy. And the modification was this creature spawned with 10 heads instead of 5. Which caused a lot of issues with folks who stole Storm of Jaws type things, but don't worry about that. And I was playing my stupid Godcaster build that you might have seen on the channel before. And I immediately saw that had a bunch of heads and threw down a spell to turn off reactions because I knew where the fight would go if it didn't. That was a trivial encounter, and it still nearly killed somebody because we didn't have consistent fire damage, despite my knowledge that I needed to turn off its reactions. That is what makes it so dangerous. You need to have an answer to every part of its kit, or you will get steamrolled. Hydras are not something to be taken lightly. They are very interesting if you have the tools to deal with them, so you can try and use these different tools and use them in this unique scenario. But if you're not a party that has consistent fire damage, you're just out of luck. And that's the end of the story. And I think that's a real shame because there isn't like a trait or something that warns GMs about this. They just need to know to look for the word regeneration in the stat block and then know, okay, if this has regeneration, does my party have a way to actually turn this off reasonably? Because for the GM, the goal is not to kill all the players, because if it was, you just throw a level 20 creature at the level 5 party. It's to give them a good challenge where they have to think, use their abilities, have a little bit of tension. These puzzle monsters can just be nonsense if the party does not have the tools to deal with them. And that's what I want to drive home with this guide. And it's to be careful when you're using monsters that have abilities like regeneration, that have things like spell immunities, and to make sure that the party has the tools they need to actually overcome these challenges. Maybe not overcome them easily, but just to overcome them in general. Alright, but before we fully transition out of puzzle monsters, I want to quickly talk about the Will-O-Wisp type thing, because this one has a lot of annoying pieces that you do see sometimes in puzzle monsters, notably absurd immunity that shuts off half the game, and then if you want to attack it from the martial side, its AC is 27, and if I go here and scroll to the AC section, you can see, oh, that's an extreme AC, so it's incredibly hard to hit for a martial character, and also, it's immune to all magic. Great. And then, if that isn't bad enough, it's also invisible unless you're within 20 feet of it. Great. Just great. And it can move 50 feet away. If played optimally, this creature will just kite you, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. It is going to shock. It is then going to fly away. Yeah, that's it. It can go invisible. It can fly really fast. Barely does any damage, which just means this fight is going to take like an hour in game time, not even real life time, just an hour in game of everybody just kind of not able to play the game. Yeah, if you don't have like exactly Revealing Light or Fairy Fire, which are the spells that can get rid of invisibility on things, you're just gonna have a bad time. And it's as simple as that. Yeah, that's unfun. And I just want to shout out for being like that. So, anyway, now on to actually overpowered creatures. And the first overpowered creature to talk about is, of course, the dragon. And similar to the Hydra, there's a lot of text here. We're going to go through that eventually, but first, I want to talk about its numbers a little bit. Because in this other tab here, I have pulled up some of its stats put into a creature building website called monster.pf2.tools. I'll have a link in the description. And right now, I just want to show you what types of numbers we are dealing with. So its stats and defenses are all pretty normal for what is a martial creature. These are like normal warrior creature-y stats. Bit more HP than you might expect on this type of creature, but has a weakness, has few immunities. Sure, this is all acceptable so far. This is good, but not completely stellar over the top. Perception is a bit below moderate, which you'll see that perception is frequently a bit below moderate on creatures. Again, standard. Has some skills, a plus 16 athletics. Pretty good there. Intimidation exists. Skills aren't bad. Strikes. Its Jaws strike is actually the high accuracy with high damage, plus a little bit extra, because this extra d6 of cold is on top of what a high damage would look like. So this is the first thing that's really pushing the boundaries of what a creature is allowed to do. And it's not that far, it's just notable that it does a lot of damage. Okay. And we'll come back to this when we talk about its spell-like abilities, because this is really what I want to focus on, because all of the dragons have a laundry list of absurd abilities. And I'm using Young White Dragon as my, well, example because it's level 6. This is maybe the first dragon an adventurer might fight. Because if a GM is like, my party's level 3, I want to use a dragon, and they flip through the book looking through, okay, what dragons are here? Young White is going to be what they see as the true dragon to use. And of course, the remaster dragons will come in with different special abilities and different levels, blah, 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 blah. But if they have the same design philosophy as the dragons that we have seen up to this point, what I'm saying here will still hold true. And it is, they just have a lot of words. And so they have things like Frightful Presence. Okay, so just for starting the fight, you get debuffed. Sure, that's fine as a special ability on a creature with decent stats. Has a reaction that says if you deal piercing or slashing damage, you just get to be slowed. Okay, a little good now. For a normal creature, this would kind of be the end of their power budget, but this is a dragon. And the thing about dragons is they do not care about power budgets. Oh, this is just an environmental little vision thing. Doesn't really matter, but you know, it's helpful, along with its dark vision and scent, so that way, you know, just in case you had ideas about being invisible. Yeah. Oh, incredibly fast fly speed. Because why not? You know, gotta make sure it goes fast. Has an agile version of its attack just if it needs it. Tail, just so that it can have a reach 15 feet ability, just in case it needs it for some reason. Then has a breath weapon that does really high damage in area of effect, with a DC 24 basic reflex save. And so this is at the high DC for spellcasters. So it is now a warrior-statted creature with above warrior damage attacks that debuffs everybody as soon as the fight starts, can take away actions with its reaction, and then also has a spellcaster level area blast ability. We are halfway through this stat block. Oh, and I forgot to mention its movement, because it moves well. Then has action combinations if it wants to attack things, and that can also sometimes get back its big spell-like ability. And by the way, cones, it can just fly in the air and then cone downward. That's a thing it can do, because it has a fast fly speed, so it might as well just circle up and then breathe down. It can. Let's see here. Yep, it also has a slam ability, same high DC. And this is non-attack, so it can ground slam. Have everything around it potentially fall prone or take 2d6 bludgeoning damage, and then frenzy the one that gets knocked over, when they're already probably frightened. These last two abilities here are flavor text, but like, this creature stat block itself has so many abilities that are all just like best in slot for its level, that, and I think I heard this somewhere else before, and I don't know if it was something I came up with, I don't know where I heard it before, but dragons are the dual class of the monster world. And that gets even more true when you look at the spellcaster type dragons, like whatever. They can have a bunch of spells and just be a full caster with martial-like HP, martial-like damage, an extra spell-like ability, area frightens, fast fly speed. Just every good ability is put on a dragon. All of them. All of the good abilities are put on dragons. And that's it. That's the gimmick of the dragon creature type. They're just all overloaded. There's nothing more for me to add. It's just a ridiculous list of abilities. And I want to just quickly read off a line text from the dual class description. So I'm going to just cut to that. Editing at a different time of day, so that's why my face cam looks different, but I'm now realizing that not everybody might have an understanding of what dual class means, and it's a variant rule that basically just lets somebody have the benefits of two classes. And I just want to read off its little section on how to balance around dual class, because I think that's pretty accurate for the types of monsters that just have too many abilities. Playing a dual class character gives a character more options, and adding additional spellcasting classes can result in a significantly wider variety of powerful spell effects available to each character. Nonetheless, this sort of dual classing is more likely to increase the party's longevity than it is to drastically adjust the level of opponents a dual class character should be fighting. The increases to saving throw proficiencies and hit points make characters somewhat sturdier and able to take on slightly higher challenges, but not every fight should be harder, nor should encounters exceed extreme threat difficulty. Dual classing into similar martial classes to double up on their advantages can result in characters who, instead of increasing their flexibility, become drastically more powerful in one focus. For instance, a fighter ranger with the flurry hunter edge gains access to incredibly accurate press actions, and a barbarian fighter has the barbarian's high damage plus the fighter's high accuracy. At this level, the white dragon is shooting off things at fighter accuracy with barbarian damage and its other abilities on top of that. So it's also debuffing your AC with its fears. It's also knocking you prone with its spell-like abilities. It also has a breath weapon, which is just like a big magic blast. So really, it's not a dual class when you're looking at the white dragon. It is a quad class. Dragons are not fair in most scenarios. So I have a thing I like to do called the Dragon Clause. If you are putting a dragon in an encounter, balance the encounter as if that dragon was one level higher. So if I were to put a young white dragon inside an encounter, I'd balance that encounter as if it was a level 7 creature. That's just my recommendation, because I find that has it feel more balanced and would give you more control over the difficulty. It's basically a warning against don't use a level +4 dragon unless your party has prep time. But that's not the end of my notes on all the monsters, because we have stuff like Lesser Death. And what I'm going to say here is true for a lot of upper level monsters, but Lesser Death is just a particularly potent example of it. And Lesser Death, if you have been in the community for a while, is famous for one thing: the Lurking Death reaction. Trigger: a creature within very large range, 60 feet, makes a ranged attack or uses an action as Concentrate, Manipulate, or Move trait. So, thinking too hard, within double electric arc range of this guy, has it be able to teleport to a square that adjacent to the triggering creature and make a melee strike against it. If it hits, it disrupts that action. Demoralize provokes this. Bon Mot provokes this. Battle Medicine provokes this. Striding provokes this. Flying provokes this. Basically, everything that is not Raise Shield or Strike will provoke this ability. You have to just delay and then agree on who's going to get hit by this. And then also, of course, gives everybody the 5e disadvantage on all of its things. It has funny innate spells like Constant True Seeing, Haste, See Invis. They're getting rid of the constant haste in the remaster reworking, which, fine. That won't matter, because all of its busted stuff is here in the Aura Misfortune, the Lurking Death. Oh yeah, it's also just immune to positive damage, aka vitality damage, just because. Like, it's just an absurd creature. It just has really, really large numbers, has massive damage, again, has a pretty good fly speed, but it teleports on a reaction, so, like, whatever. And, yeah, that's the end of it. It's just a really big creature that will just lurking death and pop somebody out of existence. And a lot of upper level creatures have ridiculous lines of text as part of their stat block. Like Ouroboros, for example. Ouroboros has probably one of my favorite lines of text in terms of rules text on any creature. Because the Ouroboros contains an infinite number of snakes that act independently, its attack of opportunity is a free action, though it can still only use one per trigger. What? Like, upper level creatures get really absurd. If you want to just have some fun, flip through the upper level creatures in this game. They have some ridiculous lines of rules text. And, of course, I think that I should go with the creature that was designed to be overpowered, and actually is, and is completely absurd in all regards, the Tarasque. Where do I start with this thing? So, it visibly looks like it has less text. Then you realize, every single line here is a keyword. Like, it is just all of the keyworded abilities. If you are in Foundry, have a Tarasque just in your directory of creatures to access, so you can just drag and drop the different abilities onto things. It has that many of them. If you're like, how do I template this? Look at how the Tarasque templates it. Because it has all of the nonsense, just everything. Want action cheating? Here, get 3 attacks, or 6 attacks as 3 actions. Why not? Hey, you want to just be able to swallow things whole? Sure, have that be one of your reactions, because you have 3. Reactive strikes? Sure. Oh, somebody tries to do something? Haha, get hit by yourself, your own attack. Imagine trying to hit it with a line ray or magic missile, aka force barrage. No, you just hit yourself. Also, 300-foot frightful presence, and also it resists all physical damage, and also has regeneration 50 and no damage type to remove the regeneration, so it's literally unkillable. And it's also level 25, so if you're just going to determine most overpowered as most powerful, hey, there you go, it's the Tarasque. That's the end of the discussion. Nothing else is, like, literally unkillable. And I know somebody in the comments will mention this if I don't, but Disintegrate. Disintegrate in the pre-remaster version was described as a green ray. There is no ray trait, and the Tarasque is the only creature that cares about ray abilities. And this says that if something is reduced to 0 HP, it gets turned into a fine powder. The Tarasque is, of course, immune to ray abilities because of its carapace. Which, sure, fine. But what they forgot is that in the player core reworkings, it's a black tracer bolt, not a ray. Which means if you can get the Tarasque down to 0 HP and then hit it with Disintegrate, it turns into dust. Technically killable, okay? Technically. I have nothing more to add. It's just that there's technically a way to kill the Tarasque now. And I think that concludes this video. Yeah, let me know if you think I missed any creatures in the comments below, because I probably did. But I wanted to really highlight why things are overpowered. And yeah, there we go. Like, subscribe, do all the good stuff.